Hello and welcome to Functional Tests video. In this video, we'll take a look on Magento testing framework and functional tests in Magento in general. Then we'll create the functional test, configure and run it. So, functional tests in Magento 2 are located under Dev, Tests, Functional. Tests are using separate framework for execution that is stored in separate repository. So, to be able to run or create functional tests, you will have to run composer install from the dev test functional directory that will be using the composer.json located here and install the framework from Magento MTF repository. Additionally, to be able to run tests, you have to specify your configuration first in phpunit.xml. Here, the most important is to specify the URLs to Magento frontend and backend. Then you can also update additional parameters. Second, if you are using external services that requires credentials for your testing, for example PayPal or DHL shipping carrier, you have to specify the credentials in the credentials.xml file. Then you have to go to etc directory and create your config.xml based on example of config.xml.dist. Here you have to specify the connection in credentials and URLs like backend login, backend password and URL to backend. Additionally, you have to specify the credentials for Selenium server. Functional tests in Magento 2 require Selenium server for execution, so you have to download the Selenium standalone server and run it before running the tests. Also, depending on browsers that you are going to use for testing, in this case I'm using Chrome, you have to ensure that WebDriver for Selenium is present on your system. Now let's take a look on test structure. We'll go to Tests Magento Checkout namespace, because our lucky order is the result of checkout. Under checkout text namespace, you can see block, constraint, etc, fixture, page, test case, and test step namespaces. In the etc directory, you can see configuration files. The di.xml in tests works the same way as it works for Magento 2. So here we are adding an argument to assert card is empty class. The test case XML is the class that is used to specify the sequence of steps for the test. Instead of code implementation in the test, a sequence of individual steps can be provided, so that those unit steps can be reused in different tests. The steps are located under test step direct, and they are interacting directly with the page objects and blocks, like click place order or get guest order ID to pass it further to assert. The interaction with the page content is based on the page. In page namespace you can see XML files, and here is checkout one page success XML representation. The framework uses those XML files to generate the actual classes. Here, checkout one page success page object has just one block, that is success block. Here is the class of block, and here is a locator that specifies the root element of the block by XPath strategy in this case. Let's take a look on this block. Blocks are located under block namespace. And here is success block. Success block or general blocks in Magento are providing access to elements and actions, so they are responsible for business logic executing. Here you can see such functions as get some information from the block or perform some action using the element within the block. Then we can take a look on fixture. The fixture is the metadata of an entity. In this case, the feature is specifying the cart fields. It will be easier to understand if we'll take a look on the picture from the product. For example, simple product is listing all fields that you can specify during product creation. Picture is also used by repository, and repository is actually keeping the actual datasets based on fields in the picture. And here is the default dataset, specifying the name of the product and all information for product creation. Now let's go back to checkout module and take a look on the test case. Test case contains two files. The first one is actual class of test case. In this case, the test case is based on test steps, so the only thing it does is just triggering the scenario execution. If test case doesn't contain test steps defined in testcase.xml, it can implement the flow inside the test. The XML file of test case is specifying a variations. So the variation is a kind of data provider return. The first variation of this test case is saying to use the default feature of virtual product for product creation, also create and apply the sales rule, use customer address from repository by that key for checkout, checkout by login. Here is a price for verification and all other data that is used by scenario or test case. Finally, the variation also provides constraints or asserts. Asserts are usually executed after test is finished. So after all steps are finished in the scenario, the asserts are starting one by one and each assert verifying its own part. For example, this assert is just checking the success message. The next assert will check that minicart is empty after placing an order. And the constraint itself is also communicating with the elements on the page directly or through page and block objects. For example, this assert that checks that cart is empty is opening checkout cart page, getting the block that contains the message, getting text from block, and compares it to the message that should be there. Now let's take a look how we can use existing Magento tests to cover our lucky order functionality with functional test. Because of this video contains a lot of files and code, I decided to create all files before the video and go through them during the video. So I created my namespace near the Magento namespace, the lucky order module namespace, and test. Inside test first, I created a block that is main column block. This block actually represents all information that you can see in the main content area on order success page. Here I have a selector for lucky message. As our lucky message block doesn't output any wrappers, I have to stick to the message itself. And I provide just one function, defining if message is present. So it finds the selector of a message by XPath inside the root element of that block and returns if that element is visible. Then I have added my block to the checkout one page success page object. For this I have to reference the checkout one page success page, specifying name, MCA, and module. The module should be actual parent module of checkout one page success page. Then I added my block as main column so that it will be available by getMainColumn method after generation. The class of my block is pointed to the class that we have seen earlier, And finally, I specified the locator of root element of that block and strategy of that locator. Also, I had to update repository. So in this XML file, that is catalog product simple, I am adding a dataset to existing Magento catalog test repository catalog product simple. My dataset has name Lucky Order. Actually, it's a copy of default dataset with several changes. Like the price is set to Lucky and tax class ID is set to none to keep the price Lucky without applying any tax to it. Also, I created a constraint, assert Lucky Order message. That constraint is assessing checkout one page success page, gets my block from that page by getMainColumn function and calls isMessagePresent function. Finally, to run our test, we have to add variation to the actual test case. So the test case is Magento checkout test case one page checkout test, and the variation should have a unique name. In this variation, the first param available for any test case is config data that is used for preparing configuration for test run. In this case, I am enabling check money order payment method and free shipping on checkout. Then, for products that should be added to shopping cart, I am specifying the dataset that we have seen earlier, catalog product simple repository, Lucky Order dataset. I would like the checkout method to be guessed in this case. Use default customer dataset and use US address 1 as a shipping address dataset. Finally, I would like to use free shipping service and free shipping method and check money payment method. For the verification, I need just two constraints. The first one is verifying that order was placed successfully by looking at the order success message. Second one is a constraint created inside my namespace that is verifying the Lucky Order message. After creating of all those files, you have to generate the PHP classes from all specified XML files. To do this, you have to go to dev tests functional from the Magento 2 root and then go to utils directory. Here you have to run php generate.php file that will create the page classes, fixture classes, repository classes, blocks, fixtures, handlers, pages, and repositories from XML files that we've created. Now we are ready to run the test. And to run the test, we have to get back to the actual test class. Checkout, test case, one page checkout test. One more thing, if you will run the test class, all variations will be executed. So in this case, I would like to temporarily comment out the checkout variations to execute only my variation. And I will run the one page checkout test. Now the fixtures are created using handlers, so no action is performed in browser. There are three types of handlers in Magento Test Framework. Some handlers are persisting the data required for the test using Web API, some of them are performing curl requests, and some can use UI. However, in this case, the preconditions were persisted via curl requests, so it helped to save some time on running test. As you can see, our lucky product was added to shopping cart, and now Magento is placing order. And we see the message, our order is lucky. We can return to PHP Storm and see that test is green. Thank you for your attention, and in the next video I will tell you about performance tests.